Welcome one more day to Space and Harmony. And you might be wondering what's the diagram that you have just seen on the screen. If you are intrigued by it, I beg you wait until the end because I will explain that it's a more complete and clarifying way of viewing the Tree of Lives, which is our true being. And it's also a summary of what I said in the previous video. But now let's start wondering why we keep eating from the tree of knowledge of good and bad. Why we keep experiencing duality, a lack of serenity, lack of mental clarity, lack of abundance. We feel a lack of something always. And the answer is very clear. In spite of having received the key of conscience, we replace it with the key of knowledge. Actually, that goes back to the fall of the first humanity, as we will see. Let's start realizing that in this society where we live, we receive a huge amount of data, information, and this doesn't lead to any fullness, any self-realization. Data in itself is empty. It doesn't lead to understanding, and therefore there cannot be conscience out of mere information. Even Master Yeshua said to the Pharisees, "O doctors of the law, that you keep away the key of conscience, and you don't enter and keep others from entering." Now, entering where? That's the question. Well, we have to enter into ourselves, into our true self. And notice how in the Gospels that passage is usually translated as the key of knowledge. But we are not looking for the key of knowledge. That's the thing. And we can only enter ourselves with conscience, not with mere information, mere data. Conscience, as I have said many times, is the union of wisdom and understanding. Chokmah and Binah. Get wisdom and understanding. That's one of the most important advices. Because wisdom is the intuition of what we have to do, and it's incomplete without understanding, because understanding gives us the view of the whys of things, even the hows, to step aside from evil. But without wisdom, it's incomplete as well. And conscience alone is not enough because it just gives us the inner view of all we are, especially the force that can take us where we have to be and can help us do what we have to do. This force is will, the will with which we manifest true conscious love. Conscious love is basically oriented towards inner development, to grow like a seed in order to give, distribute all the gifts that we have for others, so others can also grow themselves. So true love is always unconditional and conscious, it's not mechanical. It's at will. Because what people usually call love is rather the love of the emotions, which is a false love. The love of the emotions is based on attachment, demanding conditions. It leads to jealousy, disappointment, and eventually to hate. And we are not speaking about instinctive love either, because the love of the instinct is based on psychological affinities and polarities, chemistry. And when chemistry and magnetism is no longer there, love is over. We all know that. So we need to be aware of this original force of unconditional love, which is the expression of will, and that will help us do what we have to do, and will help us be taken where we have to be taken. Now, the reason why we usually don't access true conscience and true loving will is because we remain in the union of false wisdom and false understanding, which give as results knowledge, information, which is very superficial. In the Sephirotic trees is known as Da'at. On the contrary, conscience is Da'at Elyon, or the deeper knowledge, but it's not knowledge, it's more alive. Conscience is a more living knowing, whereas normal knowledge is based on data about the external world. And this is basically the essence of the tree of knowledge of good and bad, which was developed by draconian beings that step aside from the tree of lives. They were draconian species. Even the book of Revelation speaks of the great dragon and the ancient serpent. They basically developed a system that demands energy mercilessly from other beings using scientific knowledge. They are very mental. This is why data and information is the basis of their system. And they were the ones who designed the physical bodies, where the first spiritual humanity was tempted. We hear in Hebrew tales that the first Adamic species had the ability to see across the universe. They were very intelligent. They were not physical, but they were given the chance to explore different dimensions and were told not to eat from the tree of knowledge of good and bad. They could eat from the tree of life. And that's somehow a dilemma because they were innocent and the bodies designed by the serpent had been made in such a way that they trapped divine light, and that's what happened. When the Adamic soul came to explore the world designed by the serpent, a mix took place. The divine light and that chaotic emotional mental impulse of the tree of knowledge. And here there is obviously a dilemma because the Adamic light was not fully developed to face and understand darkness, so it eventually became mixed with it. The Adamic species ate from the tree of knowledge of good and bad. They came to be fully incarnated in those bodies designed by the serpent, and that's when they developed qualities that are from the tree of knowledge. And we read about this, for instance, in Ezekiel 28, which speaks about the anointed cherub. The first Adamic souls had divine light, they were anointed, they were a type of the one who was to come, as Paul said in Romans 5:14, and they were not able to use that divine light because they were not mature enough. They were very beautiful, as we read in the story, but iniquity was found in them because of the multitude of their trading. They became engaged with the richness of the fourth dimension and also the third dimension. They began to exploit natural resources in order to become like Elohim. They wanted to be gods. That was the temptation. You shall be as gods, said the serpent mind. And this was obviously an act of pride, which was the cause of the fall. So it was not really the serpent only, but that pride was absorbed by them. Obviously, they had been put to sleep before, but the truth is that they fell, and all because beings of the draconian side told them that if they incarnated, if they use that world, they could become messiahs. This is told in several traditions, and they failed because they were not prepared to do so. And when they fell, they tried to influence later humanities that descended from the fall. And this is why we have a society full of technology. Most of the technology we have comes from fallen Adamic species, and the other side of the negative influence comes from the draconian architects themselves, and their fruits, which are other species, became sort of demons that attack humanity. And when they fell, many of these Adamic beings became rulers, archontoi in Greek. This is why they are called archons. Many speak of the archontic corporation because they act like a corporation, and they have been trying to move humanity towards their technological world so they can be again incarnated, because they want to bring back the Garden of Eden. Most of them do not have bodies as we understand them. Some of them have sort of bodies, but they are degenerated. They have to be surviving by means of certain energy supplies. Some say these supplies come from humanity, but they basically exert influence on humanity, even from the unconscious. Many of the powers that be in our society come from these fallen Adamic species, which have generated a technological society that they will try to use in the future. But we should not forget the other side of the equation, which are the draconian architects, whose way of action is rather different. They are trapped in this solar system, and they cause catastrophes, they cause wars, they perform different types of activities in order to generate chaos, negative emotions from which they eat. This is acknowledged in ancient traditions. But obviously, we should not be scared about all this. It's known since antiquity, and we should rather focus on our true divine soul so we do not make the same mistake as the first Adamic species. First of all, we are not trying to be gods, or even God, because God is a concept of duality, is the tree of knowledge of good and bad. If there is God, there is also an evil. God is always fighting against evil. God, to me, are the angels that fight for us, which is good because we do not have to fight. Some other beings fight for us. And they make mistakes as well. They have established a protection in this Earth and probably other planets of the solar system. But everything has become stagnated because evil is concentrated in this point of the universe. They are very good ambushing evil, but they are not good at solving the problems. Other beings have incarnated in the middle of chaos in order to solve and dissolve darkness from within. That's what we, as body of messiahs, do on earth, connected to the divine soul, divine collective soul, the Son of Man, whose nature was established by Yeshua, because he completed the process in himself. And this means that our true divine soul has the original emotional midot that became disarranged in the first fallen Adamic species. When the soul of humanity fell, basically what became disharmonized were the 6 middle spheres in the tree of life. His tree of life stopped growing and he developed the tree of knowledge, which is part of the so-called chakra system that we see in many places. It's incomplete. And the spheres that became disharmonized are Chesed, mercy, Geburah, power, Tiferet, beauty, Netzach, which is victory, Or, which is discipline, consciousness, splendor, and finally Yesod, which is the foundation of energy, the divine presence that became covered with the energy of the serpent. As he lost mercy, he demanded energies from others because he felt the lack inside. He didn't felt the abundance that the mercy gives. He made a wrong use of his power. He was a very powerful being. He became proud instead of recognizing the beauty inside himself. And these three first spheres of the middle section of the Sephirotic tree are known as the chamber of the heart. And they are symbolized by the word Heder, which means chamber. Het, the letter Het, states for Chesed, mercy. Dalet, it states for Din, which is judgment in the sphere of Geburah, power. And Resh states for Rahamim, which means compassion, and takes place in Tiferet, beauty. And Adam did not have true compassion for himself and for others because he did not understand the conditions which he had accepted, the 4-dimension and 3-dimension conditions, which are very limited. They do not know the 5th dimension, really. And this is why they disharmonize also the sphere of Netzach, victory. They wanted to become like Elohim, to conquer, to be more than others. And all because they lacked discipline, they lack true consciousness, which is the self-knowledge that leads to development. And this is why they remain with the energy of the serpent that covered the divine presence, the Shekinah. And now that we know what became disorganized in those first species, let's not make the mistake of thinking that we have to go step by step with some sort of technique or method to harmonize each sphere separately. No, we are not using the tree of knowledge, we are using the tree of lives, which means eating directly from something which is already complete. The divine soul is not disharmonized, is full. There we can experience true mercy right now, abundance. We can experience true discernment, which is appropriate righteousness or judgment, if you will. There we have force. We have compassion of ourselves because we recognize the beauty that we really are. And this is not self-pity. Sometimes we have to be very strict, cutting some negative habits. And by understanding all the weaknesses, we can also understand and have compassion for others. Because everyone is going through a process of transformation, and this is not easy. Moreover, we also realize that when we are in our true being, we are already successful. Success is guaranteed. We cannot fail if we are in the path that is meant for us. And obviously, we also have discipline and capacity of self-knowing by means of consciousness. And this is what transforms the sphere of Yesod, the foundation, where we experience the rock of salvation, the Shekinah, the divine presence, which is all over, is the most objective and concrete reality that there is, because the Shekinah is the manifest expression of the Holy One, which is invisible and beyond our understanding, but the Shekinah is the materiality of the divine. That's also known as the foundation of the Messiah. And as you can see in this diagram of the Tree of Lives, the sphere of Malkut, which is the foundation, and the sphere of Yesod go together because they both are together. And they ascend towards Tiferet, beauty. This is like the maiden in the tower being raised as a bride towards the Tiferet, where she is married to the husband. The mind of the Holy One meets the divine body. And that's basically the growth of the soul, the maiden, Alma in Hebrew. This is why I took the sphere of Yesod and the sphere of Malkut and raised them towards Tiferet, beauty, harmonization, and also to universal conscience, that Elyon. And if you notice, they remain in the middle column. We always remain centered in the middle column, where all opposites are harmonized and balanced, so to say. And now you can understand why conscience is the key to harmonize the middle section of the Tree of Life. That's the door to the chamber of the heart, Heder. And we can also understand why Yeshua said, look for the foundation of the divine soul and its righteousness, and everything shall be added unto you. But all begins, as I said, in the rock, in the foundation, where we are established in humility, which is a lack of pride, a humility that allows us to dissolve the energy of the serpent, which covers the divine presence, the diamond of our being, as I call it in one of the previous videos. It's a humility that turns us into a divine chalice, the Grail. This is the mystery of the Grail. King Arthur became king because he was able to take the sword from the rock. That rock is this divine presence, which is basically the key of becoming a Messiah. As we read in one of the letters of Paul, in spite of coming in the form of God, Yeshua did not regard himself as God, let's say the infinite Holy One, but he rather emptied himself and became service for humanity. Now, this is basically the key of transformation. Receive all the gifts of our being and give them away. Then the false personality, little by little, dies off. Obviously, it's also important to know the weak points of our false personality, but also the strong points of our worldly personality, which has somehow the doors of manifestation of our true being. And this can even be known with a birth date. And remember that in the diagram which I show you, we can see really what our true divine soul is. Our true personality is the manifestation of the Holy One, because the I amness is always the beginning and the end. It's really all over. This is why I put it above and below, even though there is no above and below. But the I amness is the point from where will manifests, and therefore our conscience as well. With will and conscience we manifest the divine soul. We have been given divine will and divine conscience in order to manifest the divine richness. And thus we can understand the incompleteness of the common Sephirotic trees, which are based on that Tachton, the lower knowledge, not conscience, which is that Elyon, the higher knowing, we can say. That Tachton is all external data, the tree of knowledge of good and bad. I indicate it as some sort of nuclear danger. And as you can see in the popular Sephirotic trees, Malkut and Yesod are separate, they are not in Tiferet. And this is why the energy of the serpent has completely hijacked the foundation in Yesod, which is the abundance of serenity and energy, and vitality, which cannot grow because the ancient serpent keeps feeding on all the energy leakages, all the negative manifestations of energy on Earth. And let's remember that despite we have been given these keys of transformation, we should not make the mistake of turning them into a sort of key of knowledge. This is not just information to be stored, but rather to be shared and actualized. We have to experience the aliveness of conscience, getting into contact with the tissue of life, the tissue of the original cosmos, where we are not isolated. We have to be in contact with others. We cannot walk alone. And this is really the meaning of dwelling in the foundation, the Malkut, the divine presence which connects everyone to everyone else. This is why I say that it's not a kingdom of heaven, because this is not a pyramid system, but rather an hierarchy. Hierarchy is comprised of holons, which are holistic expressions. Holon comes from the Greek holos, complete, and an hierarchy is a system of wholenesses that belong to a greater wholeness. And I find very interesting also that the word Malkut has 3 letters, Mem, Lamed, and Hav, and this can be read in 3 different ways. We can say Melek, which in Hebrew means king, but that belongs to an old paradigm in which there were kingdoms and kings and queens, but in true reality we are not in a kingdom. I prefer to use the word master. We are meant to be masters. And those 3 letters can also be read as angel or messenger, which makes sense because our being is like a neuron in the cosmic mind, the cosmic brain, and it's connected to ourselves through a dendrite, an extension, through which true divine intuitions travel. Those would be the neurotransmitters that are not just empty information. That's how we keep connected ourselves to our deeper self and to all the tissue of life. And thirdly, that a range of letters can be read as Moloch, and Moloch is the devourer of souls. Therefore, we can be masters of our own life in the tissue of the original cosmos, expressions of the Holy One, and messengers of true loving light, or be part of the soul-eating machine in which most people are trapped. For now, I think it's enough information. Thank you very much for listening with attention. If you consider this video was helpful or inspiring, please give thumbs up to promote the channel and help others access it. I'll be introducing all this information in the web. Even though I'm still working in the Spanish version, it's very difficult to work so many sites at the same time, but I'll do it. And until the next time, as always, blessings of unconditional love, unmodified life, true integral conscience, and deep serenity.